Welcome to the Faith Film Fam podcast. Today we have Isaac Norris, and we're going to be talking about the new film Between Borders. Isaac, thank you for being on. I'm really excited to talk about this new film.
I'm glad to be here. Appreciate you guys supporting the film in this way.
Yes, it's going to be good. Okay, let's talk about tell us what the storyline is of Between Borders.
Yeah, so the storyline of this film is about a true story about this Armenian family that were living in Baku in the late 80s. And there was this uprising dispute that came between Azerbaijan and Armenia over this territory, and it kind of spilled into the capital city, and became something that created a lot of problems for Armenians living in Azerbaijan to the point that our family had to flee. And it's kind of their story of looking for home, looking for a new home, and finding it in ways that I should say not we, but that they did not anticipate finding it. And it also kind of goes back and forth between that. And then they have a court case that they're pleading for asylum in the US. So it kind of tells their story while also you learn about their court case.
I love true stories. I
Yes,
think
me too.
I think for me, true stories puts me in their place so
Mm,
much more. It's like, wow, these people actually went through this, um,
hmm.
fearing for their lives, the hostility that they faced. I had the
Yeah.
privilege of watching the pre-screener this morning, and I was like, what a story. It's just riveting. Like this story of faith and hope.
Yeah.
And as you guys say, this is amidst great oppression. So between borders, um, you started to say you started to say our family. Tell us why you're saying we.
Yeah. I mean, this film has been in the making of 30 years. I grew up as a missionary kid. My parents were church planters in Volgograd, Russia, where this family lands. And while my dad, who's our EP on this, he kind of twisted myself and the other writers' arms and said, "Hey, I don't want to be in this story." But he is actually in the real true story, he's actually the pastor of the church that they find themselves in. And so we've known this family for 30 years, and
Wow.
have seen the different stages and phases of their journey, and I've always kept in close touch with them. Actually, the youngest daughter is one of my best friends. So we just love this family and wanted to share this story and honor them and celebrate what God did in their lives.
Wow. So when the family fled to Russia, they find faith primarily
Mhm.
through your father.
Yes, he does not want to ever take any sort of credit for that, which is why we kind of
Right.
wrote his role in multiple characters that are in the movie and made his name disappear. But in reality, and that's actually what the family would say, especially Olga, who I talked about this recently. She said, "Your dad's my pastor. Like he's my
Yeah.
pastor. He's my first pastor."
Yeah. So you firsthand got to watch this story unfold right before your eyes.
Yeah. Yes, and it's an interesting story for us in that like and that's where we had some tension of when we're writing it. We just really wanted to honor them with the
Yeah.
story. We wanted to make sure that it was true, and then also there's this tension of well, it's got to be entertaining and timelines
Yeah.
had to be a little bit shortened and sped up some of the things that did take place. But really at the heart of it, it's like, hey, this is people that we know and we love,
Yes.
and for us, like one of the traits of this movie being successful is also them saying, "Hey, we approve and we agree with this story," and they did, thankfully.
Okay, so what challenges did that bring about? I mean, that's a lot to put into one film. That's a lot to take into consideration. You know, you hear of certain films, they say, okay, this is how it's going to be, kind of take it or leave it, but you wanted to be honoring in all different ways. What challenges were presented there then?
I would say the biggest challenge, which we never encountered, but it was this unknown of when we were writing a story. Okay, at what point do we bring the script to them? At what point do we tell them, "Hey, we're going to change this"? And every time we came to a point where we were like, "Hey, like in reality, this timeline took this long. We need to shorten it." We would say, "Hey, this is kind of a big change. Are you guys okay with it?" And they gave us their blessing. Um, but I think the biggest challenge that we faced was, hey, if they watch this movie for the first time and they are like, we hate it, we were like, what do we do? What do we do? And thankfully, like they said, we love it, and they were very appreciative. And honestly, I could never expected anything less than that. But we had that conversation, like, hey, like we want to honor them more important than us sharing this movie with thousands of people. It's making sure that they're happy with what we're doing. And so that was a tension that we faced at times, but they were fantastic and never became a real challenge.
So good. Tell us if somebody wants to get tickets to Between Borders, how do they do that? When is it in theaters?
Yeah, so it comes out this coming weekend, January 26th through the 28th. We have a 3-day release through Fathom Events, which is now Fathom Entertainment. It's in 600 cities nationwide at around 800 screens. So if you either looked at betweenbordersmovie.com or on Fathom Entertainment's website, you can find that it's most likely in your local theater all across the nation.
One of the things that's so important for people like Isaac to be able to go and make more movies is that we actually go to them in theaters. That makes a
Yes.
huge difference, right, Isaac?
It does. We need you to show up at the theater, and even now, like it's this opportunity for us that, hey, right now we have a 3-day release, but if people show up to the theater, the theaters will say, hey, people are coming to this movie. We should probably keep it. And that's a very real possibility.
That's so good. So take your friends, take your family. It's a it's a movie that will leave you feeling inspired in your
Mm,
faith and with hope. I would say
yes.
I would say those are probably the two themes that came to my mind the
Mm.
fastest was faith and hope. Was there other themes that you think people might take away from the movie?
You know what? Some of the themes that I love that this movie represents, and even at times challenged me when we were making it, because I was like, hey, like let's discover the family drama in this story. Let's discover this family that, ends up fighting each other and are unhappy. And they were like, that just didn't happen. Like aside from some normal, family arguments,
Sure.
like this family was united. And so to see a family that's united is something that I think is a great theme of the movie. It's about survival. It's about a family's love for each other, about parents wanting nothing more than to provide their daughters with the best possible future. And so I think that's like two wonderful themes. And then I also think like what you already mentioned, like it teaches you empathy of
Yes.
wow, like I had no idea that, these people that could be my neighbors walked through this, that their story is unlike anything I've ever had to walk through personally,
Yeah,
for sure.
for
And
sure.
so it teaches us empathy and to try to understand other people.
Yeah, I was even thinking, gosh, as you said that, just refugees who are here, we
Mm,
don't think
yeah.
about the trauma that they have been through in order to get here. There's a point in the movie where the father, as he's testifying, he really struggles because he doesn't want to talk about the pain, the trauma
Mm,
that he's been through. Um, and
yeah.
I think that that's such a great point to allow people to look at those who are refugees that are, like you said, in our own neighborhoods in a
Yeah.
different way.
Absolutely. I mean, we just have most of us, obviously, there's some people that have been through some horrific things,
Yes.
but most of us have not walked in the shoes or in the paths that many of these people have walked that are refugees that are here in our country at great personal sacrifice,
Yeah.
just as this family is.
Yeah. And you have some amazing actors in this film.
Yes,
Wow.
God was all over the details
Wow.
of putting this team together. I can go on forever about actually about just about every single person, but yeah, I mean, my kids were thrilled that we have Mrs. Claus in the movie and Elizabeth Mitchell who played
Yep.
Juliet in Lost. That's what I know her from, but my kids were
Yep.
like, she's a Mrs. Claus, and I was like, yeah, that's true.
But she was
And
also
Michael
in
Paul
Lost.
Chan.
She was in Lost.
Yes, she was in Lost. I will say one thing that was really, really sweet about her is my family got to visit set, and I was like, oh man, like it'd be really like I don't want to like mess like with what they're going like with all the stuff that they're doing as she
Yep.
prepares for her role because she takes it very seriously. But I'm like, oh, my kids are here. I'd love to ask for a picture. And I went up to her, and she was like, I bet your kids want a picture with Mrs. Claus. And I was like, yes, they do. And it was so kind of her. She's so gracious. And Elizabeth Tabish, obviously from The Chosen. I mean, and Patrick Sabungi, he actually had a show that just came out this past weekend called The Hunting Party on NBC.
Oh, that's amazing. That's amazing. I've loved watching Elizabeth Tabish as Mary uh,
Hmm.
on The Chosen. How did that come about? How do you find people who are well known to do a film that it isn't like
Yeah.
in every theater. It's a Fathom event. It's
Hmm.
the
A
independently
smaller release.
created.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a smaller release. How do you find some of these people who uh is it because they just have a heart for the film? Tell me more about that.
Well, I can't not share one of the cool, I would say, miracles that took place to be able to get this film made. And the principal one was getting Elizabeth Tapish on board. About 5 years ago, when my dad had said, "Hey, I want to make the Petrosyan's story," he said, "You know who would make a really really good Violet is that girl that's playing Mary Magdalene in The Chosen." And I actually remember thinking, like, yeah, that would never happen because The Chosen is like the biggest show ever right now.
Yeah.
And you fast forward a few years, and we had hired an entertainment lawyer who was helping us with some contracts for the writers and stuff like that to get this movie working. I had told him all about the story. I had never told him about Elizabeth Tabish, and I was going to an event that Elizabeth was going to be at, a screening for a film that she was in. And I was on the phone with my lawyer as I was driving to Nashville, and I told him, I was like, "Yeah, like actually, the person that we want to play in this movie is Elizabeth Tabish, and I actually am going to see her tonight, and I might like bring up the story." And he said, "Wait, are you serious?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he was like, "Well, she's my client." No idea. Had no idea. This whole time he was working on us with the movie. No idea that it was his client. And he said, "I can absolutely get this story like in front of her." So I got the chance to meet her. I told her that this is an Armenian story. I also had no idea that she is part Armenian.
Oh,
And
wow.
she said, "Well, I'm part Armenian and I want to be part of telling Armenian stories." So already like those two things, it was like, well, she's for sure going to read the script. And she did. And she fell in love with the story and fell in love with this family. And that really was like the first building block to saying like, okay, well, this
Yeah,
movie's going to happen.
that's amazing. You mentioned you were on set during the recording. Were you on set for the entire thing? Were you just parts of it? How does that work for you?
Yeah, so I worked along with a guy named Jude Walco. He and I were the main producers of this film, and so we were on set the whole time. We shot it in Romania. We were there for about 6 weeks, and yeah, helping produce it and make sure that the day to day kept moving forward.
Yeah, the cinematography, the audio, the music. There's an album from the film.
And our composer is working on a soundtrack, yeah, to come
Yeah,
out.
so good. It was beautiful. It was a beautifully done film, amazing acting. Just applaud you. And you're
Yeah,
already
thank you.
winning awards for this movie. Tell us
Well,
about
we're
that.
nominated. We're
Oh,
nominated for
nominated.
five. Yes, we're nominated for five ICVM Crown Awards. That takes place at NRB next month. We're really
Oh,
excited to attend that. Whether we win or we don't win, it's really, really awesome just to be nominated
so good.
amongst some other great, great filmmakers.
That's so good. How fun. What are some of your favorite scenes from the movie?
Oh man. Um, I always kind of gravitate towards some of the songs. We were very fortunate that a guy named John Guerra wrote some songs for this film because getting licensing for songs is kind of difficult from
Yeah.
communist Russia. But I grew up hearing Ivan and Olga sing. In the film, Olga doesn't sing, but Ivan is a brilliant musician. He is a brilliant singer. And so having that part of his life being able to be experienced on screen is some of my favorite parts. Um, yeah, and also like growing up in Russia, the cops that play kind of villains in the story, um,
Yes.
they are like actually I was a little bit uncomfortable on set that day because I was like, ooh, I've had the very, very similar experiences with Russian cops, and it was very
Yes.
intimidating, and it was very frightening, and it was very scary. And I was like, these guys are like too good. So that's definitely one of my. I didn't like it, but I'm also like, it's so true. It's so good.
Yeah,
So
they did a great job
they're
for
very
sure.
menacing.
Yeah, it was a little scary, as they're playing their part
Yeah,
so well, for sure.
yeah.
So, how many other theatrical releases have you had before this film?
This is my first.
Okay, so that's what I was thinking your answer was going to
Yeah.
be. What was it like watching your first film on the big screen as you're like, wow, I my team and I, it's not just you, I know that, but my
Sure.
team and I just made this happen. It's actually on the big screen. What does that feel like?
Yeah, I mean, unbelievable for sure. But also like I feel like such gratitude. I'm such like a team person. And so I was like, man, I'm so grateful. And I think back to like how hard it was to make this movie and the struggle it was, certain days on set. And I think about it in such like what a great gift that God has given me to be able to share this and see it this way, but also what a great gift for our team to see, hey, like we poured, blood, sweat, and tears into making this, and for us to be able to enjoy this. Unfortunately, we don't have this big premiere where we're all coming together, and especially with like most of our crew and most of our actors being in Romania. But to be able to share this with them is such an honor, and I know that we are all very, very, very grateful and proud that we're able to do this.
Yeah. You were talking about, okay, you record for 6 weeks in Romania. That's got to be a challenge. Finding and casting everyone, that's got to be a challenge. Creating the funds for a film, that's got to be challenging. I just don't think people realize how challenging it is to get to this point
Yeah.
of watching your film on the big screen. What do you think some of your biggest challenges were?
Mm. Um, I don't know what the biggest ones were, but felt like we had challenges all the time. I mean, like you said, it took us a couple years to get the script to where we felt like, hey, this is a good spot and we should move forward. It took us a couple years to get financing in order, to say like, hey, this is going to work. And
Mhm.
then even then, we were still trying to finished financing while we were filming it,
Yeah.
saying like, "Hey, God, please provide so that we can finish this film and actually, take it to post production and release
Yeah.
it." And God was just so faithful throughout the process of it. It felt like He just gave us our daily bread, literally, of, "Hey, today you need this, so I'll provide this, and hey, for the next step you need this, and I'm going to provide that." And so yeah, I don't know what I would point to as a single greatest challenge. Our director said it really well. Like when he came on, he only came on, we never met in person until we were on set in Romania, well, in prep. And when he came on, he said, like, man, like it was like it all of a sudden, like it started becoming this thing to say, okay, now the script's done. Okay, now Liz Tabish is interested. Okay, now we've already like Liz has a schedule. She only had 3 days between finishing our shoot and starting The Chosen. Um, and so it's like, hey, if we're gonna shoot, it's gonna be right now. And he said it became like this almost unstoppable like force that was coming. And in some ways, you're like, yeah, we were riding that wave, and it's like, no, we were trying not to get smothered by this wave because it was happening whether we were ready or not. And so we just had to like try to like our Jude, our other producer, said we were building the plane while it was taking off the runway. So it felt like every day we were just hanging on to our seats, but it was also like fun and amazing and
Yeah.
challenging and all beautiful at the same time.
So good. Well done. It's a beautiful film.
Thank
I
you.
hope you all go to the theaters January 26th, 27th, 28th. Is that right?
Yes. Yes, that's
26,
correct.
27, 28. Go watch this film, and I'm sure it'll come out afterwards, but we'll just wait and see where it all lands that we can all watch it in the future too. Um, Here's my question to you. So somebody goes to this movie, they walk out. What do you hope that they take away from this movie?
I would say my main thing is what we talked about earlier a little bit is empathy. of
Mm.
saying like, man, like I think some people walk out and say, I had no idea that some people walk through this. Some people walk out and say, I had no idea that Armenians have experienced such disastrous things in the history of their country and the history of
Yeah.
this people. But mainly, I hope that people walk out and say, I should really think about what other people's stories might be before I
Mm.
judge, before I, you know, have my own opinions about what's right and what's wrong. Is maybe say, like, well, maybe I should pause and really consider what their story might be and
Wow.
how I would want to be treated if my story was that. That's the main thing I hope people take away.
Yeah, that's really good.
And that our God is still in the business of doing miracles because this
Amen.
story is a miracle from top to bottom, and it's pretty amazing.
Amen. And I even think just gratitude for the safety that we have here in America,
Hmm.
the safety that we have that we don't have to think about that on a daily basis. I mean,
Yeah, it's so
the
true.
safety that we are provided, I think that for me, I was thinking about that and feeling so grateful for living in such a safe place. We don't even have
Yeah,
to think about some of the things that they had to deal with on a regular day-to-day basis. I mean, most of us aren't
totally.
thinking about how to get food or how to have a bed or how to get heat, let alone getting terrorized by police officers or by employers or not having a job. I mean,
Yeah.
it was the little things. And so I think that's what I thought about a lot was just being really grateful for the
Mm.
blessings the Lord has given us.
Yeah, that's really good.
Tell us a little more about how they came to faith in this movie. Um, I'm just so intrigued by that because your dad, because you were there watching them come to faith. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so obviously with my dad not being in the story as far as the film, you miss some of the details of the real story. Like actually, Violet, part of the reason that she decided to come to church was because she heard that there was a native English speaker leading the services, which is my dad preaching. And she was like, I've never heard a native English speaker speak, and I teach English, and I would like to go hear him speak and meet him. And so she actually like that's why she
Mhm.
came. And she said what she said in multiple like of her interviews is she said, like, I went there to hear a language and I started listening to the message and realized like, oh, like I'm here for the message
Yeah.
of what my dad was preaching. And then Yvonne, was an atheist. He's a brilliant like rocket scientist, quite literally. Um, and for him, it took him much longer to come to faith because he just didn't get it. And what you kind of experience in the film, but not like to the degree of his real story, is that we used to have American teams come over and would help with a building project or help with run a camp. And there was one team that came over, and what Yvonne said was kind of his turning point for faith is that he said, I watched this older lady on her hands and knees cleaning the floor of the church. And he said, and in that moment, I realized what she believes in is true. If she's here doing that, then she really believes in what she's professing. And it said it turned him towards Christ.
Hmm. Pretty intriguing, isn't it? How
Yeah.
God brings a rocket scientist, literally. The first time he
Yeah.
said that in the movie, I was like, was he joking? Or no, he was actually, he was
Yeah.
serious. He really was a
Yeah.
rocket scientist. And a woman on her hands and knees cleaning the floors is what finally clicked in his mind, in his spirit, that Jesus was real.
Yeah. 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 It was beautiful.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
Hmm.
Thank you for committing to such an important movie. It's
Yeah.
going to
Thank you.
really impact the kingdom. I really hope that people, when they walk away from the movie, that they see Jesus through that. I
Yeah.
mean, what a miracle that he brought them to safety. They
Yeah.
could have been sent back and just who knows what would have happened.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. That's so
Brought them
true.
true peace. They found true peace through Jesus.
Hmm. It
So
did.
good. Thank you, Isaac. We're excited. Any upcoming projects for you?
Yeah, we're working on several films right now. We have 5 to 6 that we're kind of looking at. None of them we pushed forward yet, but we really, our company Storylight Productions really likes to focus on telling true stories of about people of faith. That's kind of our focus.
So good. Well, we look forward to seeing upcoming films. You did an amazing job. Everybody go to Fathom Events and grab your tickets. Is it fathomevents.com? Fathomentertainment.com?
They changed their name, so now it's fathomentertainment.com.
There we go.
Or you can
Grab your
always go to
tickets.
betweenbordersmovie.com and you
There
can
we
find the
go.
tickets there.
Perfect. Thank you so much. We are praying for the success of Between
Thank
Borders.
you.
Thanks a lot, Isaac.
We appreciate it.